Just making
no more
Gatorade.
mouth breathers. No more mouth breathers. Only butthole breathers.
Okay.
What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Niisan podcast. I am one of your hosts, Xell, otherwise known as Josh, or otherwise known as Xell. And with me,
You got me, Crim, also known as the Asian Avenger. Another week on to episode 8 now of the podcast. I'm pretty pumped. Episode
month
8.
number dos. We're getting to
Yeah.
our third month of doing these. Oh my
I
god!
can't believe it. And I just also want to give a quick shout out to everybody at home that has been watching. We see it, we see all of that. You've been listening. Thank you. Continue spreading the word, whatever it is you're doing at home. It's wonderful, and we are more than thrilled. So thank you so much.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you guys for keeping us pushing out these podcast episodes, and we're watching all the comments and all that stuff. So we are super grateful, and also big shout out to the man behind the scene, Don. He's getting his Twitter thing figured out, but he's awesome, and he's super integral to getting these things out there. So
yeah, just yell at Don to start his Twitter account or something like that. So and then Don, if you're watching this and you've got one now, just plant it here.
Yeah, I'd say at Don, but you can't. Yeah. You can't. He doesn't have an app.
Yeah,
so
I don't know
we'll figure it out.
At editor.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, today's episode, we're gonna talk about some spicy stuff because I at least binged Castlevania this last weekend because I think the latest season came out not that long ago. I think it all dropped.
What the hell is that?
Whoa.
Oh, I got a Twitch notification. So, okay. My phone just decided to take me there. Yes. So Castlevania today is Monday. It had just aired Thursday night, right? So
gotcha.
Yeah, it's only been a weekend. By now, it'll been a week, so not too many spoilers by now, you should probably have an idea of what's going on.
Yeah. So I had not watched Castlevania, so I had to catch up throughout the whole thing. I didn't know what we were gonna do for this week's podcast, but I ended up watching all of it. So today we're gonna talk a lot about Castlevania and just what the heck does anime really mean? But first, let's break some news. Let's talk about some of the things that have been happening in the anime universe. First up, a couple of announcements in the last week or so. Overlord is getting a 4th season.
Woo!
Overlord's pretty fun. It's one of those anime that I got recommended to about OP main character isekai thing, and this one's good fun. CG is terrible. I don't know. Maybe 4th season will be this season.
3rd season was kind of medium, but hey, they could bring it back. They could bring it back. First 2 seasons were sweet, so.
Yeah, I feel like the core of the show is really good. So if you haven't seen anything from Overlord, I recommend it. It's pretty fun. So Overlord getting 4th season. Komi-san, also known as Komi Can't Communicate, is getting an anime. And this is a pretty popular slice of life manga. I know a lot of people from my Discord really like this manga. So I think there's a dedicated group of people who really love this manga and they're really excited about it. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I'm always down for slice of life stuff. And I think a lot of people are just excited that so much material from not super high profile mangas are being adapted. So I think people are just generally excited about that. And then another thing is that apparently there's going to be a new Dragonball Super movie that's going to happen in 2022.
Movie.
Yes, animated movie, not live action. God forbid.
Collectively, we all just sighed
yeah.
Let out a nice breath.
I mean, honestly, though, for all the Dragon Ball movies, I haven't watched Broly, for example, but I've seen the animation from it, and my God, the animation for the Dragon Ball movies are spectacular. So I think people are probably pretty excited about just seeing more Dragon Ball in full HD, awesome animated stuff. And I don't know. I always just enjoy some good sakuga, as they say.
Yeah, I did watch Broly myself. That was a very well animated movie. And with that in mind, I think there's another news that happened happened recently with anime movies, and another one of the topics or one of the news topics for this week's episode, and it is that Demon Slayer's movie is number one of all time.
Number one,
right? Like for non-American made movies and stuff like that, like foreign, all of that, it is now number one. So Mugen Train is absolutely killing it. Yeah.
Anime is on top. Like, do we say that anime is fully mainstream now? Because holy moly, the fact that it's okay, so not only is it number one, but it's also the first non-Hollywood, non-US film to win this annual crown in cinema history. So like, that's insane to me. That like that is how big anime is now. That it's like it's making the big bucks.
Yeah,
so that's crazy.
I can't believe that. And I mean, like now, I guess it was only a matter of time. As you know, we had tons of stuff like this from before. Like we saw, like as I'd mentioned, like anime was in Urban Outfitters, and like that was, I thought, as big as it could get, but it's gotten so much bigger now, and we've seen it kind of just continuously go up, right? Like, I mean, sorry, there's like some random lint on me and stuff like that. But yeah, like we've seen it go up and up, right? We had first off, we had the My Hero Academia movies, and those were doing pretty well. And now Demon Slayer is just like blowing everything away. So, and I recently just watched that movie too over the past weekend. So, very good movie, deserving of everything that it has that people have said about it.
Yeah. I'm really excited, and once I pay my movie ticket, it's gonna stay number one because I'm supporting the movie.
This movie was my first movie in quarantine since quarantine. Like I went to a theater and I was able to pick out my seat and just sit by myself in a far corner, and it was amazing. Like it felt so good to be back. You know what I mean? Like, but yeah, or into a theater.
And especially with something that is going to be animated beautifully. Like I think the theater experience is so worth it. Like, I remember watching Your Name in theaters, and like you'd think, Your Name, like who cares? It's just like a slice of life thing. But no, it was amazing. Like having the theater speakers go off, and like just being able to really appreciate the animation up close in such a big screen is it's worth it. So I'm excited. I'm now fully vax boy, so I can go in there and.
Now the homies can bird feed me. You know what I mean?
Wait,
if you don't know how birds feed each other, don't just go look it up. Ace Ventura.
Oh god! We just chew up food for you.
Sorry for those that are listening to this. That's much grosser when you don't have visuals.
Yeah. Okay. Alrighty.
Anyways,
okay.
And staying
now,
on the world of just delightful things and like things that you can talk about with family and at dinner. I think we have probably some of the most important news. To end this news segment. Josh,
yeah. Let me just read this this headline for you guys, okay? Life-saving technique to deliver oxygen-carrying liquid through anus gets named after Evangelion.
We are mainstream.
Basically, I guess a team of researchers from Tokyo Medical and Dental University discovered what they call the EVA method to deliver oxygen to mammals. And so the idea is that, if you watch Evangelion, there's this thing called LCL where like oxygen and other nutrients can be absorbed into the body through a liquid. And I guess they've figured it out, but it just goes through your butthole is like the way it works. So nothing like boofing oxygen for survival, right?
Yeah,
so,
the good old Bouffalant method, if you would, for Pokemon lovers. But I like it, just ruined that for you. But yeah, I can't believe it. Like the juices that you saw in the Evangelion show and movies and whatnot, when they got in the suit, right? There's like that red fluid that goes up and like kind of just like surrounds them. That's what it is. And it's kind of a cool thing that like, there's, some kind of like liquid that can give us the nutrients that we need and the oxygen to especially help us. Right. We just saw the shortness of like, like respirators. Right. And that's what one of the main things they were talking about. This is great for, eventually if we run out, like have a shortage for respirators or anything like that along the way in the future, this could be great for that. Except for that one asterisk where, as Josh had mentioned, it's just straight anus stuff. So it's like, okay, well, that's kind of weird. Is there a way we can make the nutrients without that? Like, you know what I mean? Like, can we get it from, like, can we make it like
future's
Gatorade?
here, old man. You're going to breathe through your butthole.
Get with the times, old man. That's how we breathe now. Can we just make it
no
Gatorade?
more mouth breathers. No more mouth breathers. Only butthole breathers.
Okay.
And I think my favorite thing about this whole article though is the fact that they got a quote from Shinji's voice actress, who of course needed we needed to hear the take from Shinji's voice actress, and she's quoted saying, taking LCLs through the anus, ... I've never done anything like that before. What's going on, father? Misato-san, will the EVA method save us from coronavirus? And then in parentheses, it's a bit of a different form from one would expect, but still amazing.
Science, baby.
Yeah.
Science.
Yeah.
That's the takeaway. Science, baby.
I do hope that when there's like new technological advancements in the world that they name it after things that exist in like sci-fi and, you know, in anime, like when they finally are able to digitize our consciousness and send us into a video game, like that better be called sword art, right? Or like,
no, you take that back. Okay, we call that the world. All right, we can call it the
sword art.
The dot hack method. Son, please. Okay,
that'll freak people out. It's not a very, you know, like you're never gonna get boomers to sign up to something that has the word hack in it. You know?
Are you kidding me? That's so cool.
But sword art.
Come on. No, all right, fine.
Virtual,
fine.
real
we can worry about what it's called later. But I will say that is pretty dope though. Like to have anime now being like things being named like actual science things being named after anime things and like that. So I'm excited to see where the future takes us. But really though, like I can't wait until like just one minor thing. It's like with this topic, I can't wait till years down the line after we've just chugged keg stands of LCL. I'll just call it LCL right now instead of butt juice or whatever. They're like, oh, you know, we could have always just done this too, but with like Gatorade or you know, I don't know why we didn't just start with that. Why did we chug years worth of this? But yeah. Anyways, let's move
Hospital
on.
visits are going to be really weird when instead of
God.
using like an intravenous method, they're just like, yeah, just stick it in there. It'll be fine.
The Ava method, that we got to work on something still. But yeah, let's move on. On to the
Wait, you don't want
next
to talk
part.
more about? Okay,
I'm good on LCL.
Okay. So yeah, let's talk about the thing that we wanted to talk about here that has nothing to do with breathing through our butthole. Castlevania and just anime in general, I guess, and like terminology of what the heck even, like, how do you even define anime these days, right? Because like, I remember we kind of off camera, we talked about this for a hot second where we were kind of like, well, what do you consider anime? And Crim, I know you were saying like, you know, like it's got to be Japanese to be anime, right? Like the difference, I think, when we were growing up between what was anime and what was a cartoon is that anime is from Japan and cartoons are like the Western thing. But I feel like it's gotten hazier and hazier, and I think it's like a topic that I think it's worth talking about.
Yeah.
But do we want to dive right into that, or do Castlevania first?
Let's talk Castlevania first.
Okay,
So,
Castlevania.
Because there's definitely some things that like that second half of the topic. There's going to be a lot to unwrap there. But let's just talk about Castlevania. And first off, I remember like I had told the humorous part to me is like I had told Zell to watch Castlevania, please, whatever. I just messaged him randomly at 4 a.m, I think is when I finished the whole season. I binged it all in one day because I had got my second vaccine shots. I was like, okay, well, I'm sidelined. Let's just watch this. And because I've been waiting for it. All of a sudden, you know, I also message, I messaged Kelly and she's like, okay, cool. I'm into it. And so, yeah, I messaged Josh this and then all of a sudden, I think in not even a full 24 hours after I messaged Josh this, Josh was like, hey, let's talk about Castlevania this upcoming episode. I'm like, dude, it's not even 24 hours. Have you done anything but, like, what have you been doing? And I'm like, did you seriously just watch all 4 seasons of Castlevania in under like 10 hours? Because I just told you, and boom, he's already caught up. I'm like, what? I spread that out over like years and months.
34 episodes in a weekend.
Baby, not even a weekend, like a day. So
yeah, it was like maybe 24 hours.
Yeah, exactly.
Is that even possible? I think it's possible.
And somehow you did. And let's just go with this. I'm happy now because I've been wanting to talk about this show for so long. And, you know, for those that aren't aware of it, it's on Netflix right now. And it's one of the most amazing animated shows I've seen in quite some time. In that, first off, it opens, it hooks you in right away. It's visceral. The art and the visuals are visceral. They're gritty. They're like, you know, kind of grotesque at points, because it gets gory. So if you're not into like the gore and all that stuff, like it does gore. And the most important thing here is it ends well with this season, and we'll go more into depth of that. But like another thing about this show is that holy cow, I didn't know a single thing when I started this show. I didn't know a single thing about the video game. I had seen it before, all that, but they sold me on this franchise. I don't know a thing about this game, but sign me up for more Belmonts. Sypha is like best girl. And like, you know, like I am here for this show. And I have to say, like, after now getting all 4 seasons in, wow, the creature designs are amazing. This is horror, right? Like, I would say this is a horror show. We had been talking a while back, like I've been asking Xell, like, what is a good horror anime or even just like an animated horror show? And this does that so well. But it also perfectly blends in the action that you love. So if you're looking for that, and like the story, you know, it's pretty simple. You know, Dracula is like, I've been told that in like the video game, it kind of lines up with this too, but there's always a Belmont, which is kind of like a Helsing in this world, like a Van Helsing, who is there to fight Dracula and his hordes from hell. And being Dracula in this world is not like I just can't go out in the daytime and I have fangs. It's almost like you're a full-on demon lord style. Like you have magic. And you have armies to fight for you.
Yeah. So like I kind of like you, I've heard of Castlevania over the years, right? Like they've got a ton of video games. Like every time Games Done Quick comes around, you hear about Castlevania speedruns all the time. And it's one of the only things I know about Castlevania, apparently, is in one of the games that the backdash is faster than running. So if you watch a speed run of it, they're just backdashing through the entire level. So that's like all I knew. About and also that they were in Super Smash Brothers Ultimate and they're really annoying to play against because they're just like projectile characters. So I knew that Belmonts used like a whip, had like holy water and stuff. And so that was basically it. And so, Castlevania, you know, the first season I think came out, almost 4 years ago at this point.
Yeah.
It's been a couple of years.
A season every year. So yeah.
Yeah. And so like, I remember when it first came out and people were like, oh, it's so good. It's so good. And I guess I don't know what it is, but it's just like when things come out on Netflix because of the dynamic of how it comes out, I feel like there's just less conversations about it, like compared to sort of like seasonal watches of anime where like, you know, the thing is like when you go to art,
right?
Yeah, exactly. Because like it comes out all at once, and so either you watch, you know, and you can talk about it, or you are alienated from the discussion entirely. But when it's week to week, you know, there's something to look forward to, and like everyone's kind of like talking about what's going to happen next, and there's like a lot of discussion. Yeah, that's actually probably a discussion topic for another thing. Is like, how do we feel about Netflix holding back the floodgates until the whole season's out? Because like. Anyways, that's a different topic entirely. But it's just it was something that I had not like watched or was that interested in. And then now that I know that the entire story is now fully complete, this last weekend was the time for me to just binge through all of it. And like you said, it's a dark fantasy. It's the visuals are gorgeous. They're really well done. It's by a studio called Powerhouse, which is actually US based
in Texas,
and.
Right?
Yeah, I think in Texas, and they're pretty well known for doing some work in like the video game space and whatnot. But I thought they did such a great job with this series. Like, it's beautiful. The music is great too, and I just also really enjoyed the actual story plot of it. Like you said, it's kind of simple. It's like, there's Dracula, there's a Belmont needs to, but then it like throws you off pretty quickly. I figure the way we should probably talk about this is have like a non-spoiler section where we just kind of hype up the animated show. We'll talk about later. And then later on we can have like a spoiler section, so that way for people who don't want to be spoiled at all, we can just let them know, and then
just skip through that.
So let's just talk about it generally. It's about Dracula and the hordes of hell, and basically humanity trying to, and it's kind of, for me, the joy of watching this show was that it just feels so like D&D-esque, where you're following this guy Belmont, and he's not like a glorious warrior, right? Like, he's like
scummy,
shining armor.
Yeah.
He's like grungy. He's like, his beard's all over, and like he's just kind of, he's grungy. He's kind of grody, right?
Yeah.
And he's not like virtuous and like, I'm gonna do good for the world. He's just kind of like. He reminds me kind of like Geralt in The Witcher.
Yeah. He's so hesitant. He's just like, I guess I'll do it because I have to, but I really don't want to.
Yeah, and so like it reminds me a little bit of kind of like following along a D&D party a little bit, because he starts to meet other characters who are like part of his band that they like go together and go on the adventure, and it felt to me like I don't know, it just felt like a D&D story where he goes in and he talks to townsfolk, and he finds out that like there's some crazy mystical magic thing that's happening in the town, and he has to go investigate, and they go investigate, and they find out that there's like the story kind of trickles in, and it's kind of this like mystery a lot of times when you're watching it, you're kind of waiting for the next big thing to kind of unfurl for you, and I loved that kind of mystique feel, because you just kind of didn't know what to expect, because man, when the show starts, you think, okay, well, there are people with swords, but then Dracula comes in and he's on just a whole nother level, and so he kind of sets the stage for what can happen and what could happen, and it's crazy.
I think the way the show also is like paced is brilliant. Like, right off the first episode, it presents to you what it's gonna be like for the rest of its time, like duration. Like, like within the first episode, you will get the gore. You will get like, and it's not like you wait that long either. You get to the gore pretty quick, and the chaos and the badass action and all of that stuff. So you're going to get all of that right away. So it immediately hooks you in. It doesn't make you wait until like 6 episodes in, and then, oh, it's Dracula. You see him instantly, and you see everything instantly. And I like that, because it doesn't try to beat around anything. It doesn't try to stretch it, like the story out. And I think this was like written by Warren Ellis. And if Warren Ellis, for those that don't know, I believe they've done comic books. Right? Like because the thing is, I think if I recall, Warren Ellis, or maybe it was someone else, but I'm pretty sure Warren Ellis did X-Men. Warren Ellis had an X-Men. Yeah, he did a run on Astonishing X-Men. So, we've probably seen his work before. He's got some solid stories out there. Really good comic book writer and stuff like that, along with Matt Fraction and stuff like that. So, Jonathan Hickman and all of those wonderful writers. So, like, he does a brilliant job in like bringing things together and right away. And you kind of like first season, you just meet the cast. And you find out about, like who Dracula is, why he's the way he is. And of course, you by now know you'll meet his son Alucard and stuff like that. And that's not really a spoiler. You know that's just going to happen. And so if you're a fan of like we had just done an episode, right, of like some animes we thought were like the best from 2000 and 2010. Pretty high on my list was, it was my number 1, which was Hellsing. Hellsing Ultimate. If you were a fan of that, I definitely recommend checking this show out. It has the vibes that you're looking for with twice the gore, and like it's told through the not the lens of like, Alucard or like Dracula this time. It's told through the party that, like, as Josh had mentioned, the D&D party's point of view. And they're adventuring as they go through all of this area, and you meet so many characters. And second season, they continue to add on, and like, we kind of just, I'm going to just go and say that sum up the first 3 seasons are really, really solid at building everything, right? They've built up all these characters, and you meet Isaac, you meet Hector, you meet all these other characters, and then finally we hit 4th season. And 4th season is what is presumed to be the final season. That's the one that just came out. And with 4th season, you now will see all of these seeds planted, all the questions they've asked about the character, and you now get to see all of this development come to a close and to see how everything has paid off. And they did a really good job with that. So, I think we're about to start moving into spoiler territory here because we're here to talk about season 4. But I promise you this: even if you're just like you're kind of like the person I am, where you'll still hear spoilers and all of that, but that doesn't change how you watch the show. Like, you're like, it'll be fine. And even if you don't like spoilers, you'll still enjoy the show even with spoilers in mind, because this show is so good. So
we'll have a bookmark thing so you can skip it if you want to skip the spoiler section. And for people who don't care, just keep on listening on.
Yeah. And so for those that are listening through Spotify and whatnot, this is the pause and whatnot right here. So we're probably going to go into some spoilers for about like 15 minutes, 20 minutes. Okay, so now that we've given you the disclaimer here on some spoilers, so 4th season, now you've met all, like I had mentioned, Hector, Isaac, really hot vampire goth mom that is very much so evil, and then and her friends.
Crim, does Crim have a crush?
I might have a crush, okay, but the thing, all right, I do have a crush. I'm not gonna lie, but there's Lenore, right? And God, we had just dealt with how bad I felt for Hector after, like, I was swooning for Lenore. I'm like, oh, God, possess me. But like the thing here is, please possess me. Like, and then so for those that had followed along. Hector was essentially manipulated by Lenore, tricked into making it so that he is gonna build armies for them. He has the band on his wedding finger that makes it so that all his stuff is bound.
He's just a slave.
Yeah, he's essentially just a slave, a factory that just churns out night creatures, and and so he's the same as Isaac, right? So at this point now, the character you've seen Sypha, you've seen Trevor Belmont, and their love grow for each other, and it blossomed because they eventually start dating, and you've seen them, and it feels like they've developed as much as they could by now, right? In season 3, like their stories are as far as they could be, and so Castlevania season 4 brilliantly then explores the other characters that haven't had enough time to develop yet. So now we start looking at characters like, as I'd mentioned, Hector, Isaac, I cannot remember Evil Vampire Mom, but like Lenore and like the 3, and her 2 sisters, and then, or like not sisters, but like they're her little like coven. Of a covenant?
Oh, yeah. Camilla?
Yeah, Camilla. There it is. She is now taken over, and, she is the vampire, right? Like, she's the vampire. Kind of pretty much forced herself into power here. So, and so this point of this season, you've seen, like, tons of these characters, and where they've ended up, right? And Camilla is just, like, she's forced herself into power. And this is just so sweet because they spend this whole season giving us this development that I've been waiting for, and just to see how these characters and their decisions. And you saw Isaac. I think the biggest takeaway for me here is Isaac. You watched Isaac show up as this emotionless, just kind of felt like a drone. He felt like you kind of felt like he was just literally a tool to be used to.
He's creepy. When you first are introduced to him, he's whipping himself, and he's in some ways, he started out as, it was funny because like you look at Dracula and his sort of pain that he went through from losing his wife. And in some ways, Dracula is so human because he's just struggling with loss and he's just killing himself over it. And you have other vampires who have these wants that they have, and you have Camilla who is very ambitious, and so like they have this like forward momentum about them that kind of is like what humans are like. But then you are introduced to like Isaac at the beginning, and he is like an empty husk of a human being. And by the time we get to the 4th season, he's gone through so much. And some of my favorite moments, I think, from Castlevania in general was just sort of Isaac and his talks with the various people that he meets, like the spiritual mystic guy who gives him the mirror, the pirate guy. I don't know where that accent is from, but I always think of what's his face from WoW.
He's a troll, right?
The death troll. Yeah, the death troll. Specifically,
not Bomsamdi.
Yes, Bosamdi. Like they have like a very similar accent, and I love that accent so much. And Bosamdi is one of my favorite characters, and so just him kind of
I love it.
And so so anyways, yeah, Isaac has some of the coolest, I think, development over the course of the series, and we get this kind of see the full payoff because by the end of it, he was like, I can want to enact revenge on all these like shitty people in the world, right? I can just do that. But at the end of it, he was like, wait, but I actually have more strength and power than that, right? And I can actually change the way the world works. And I thought that sort of like wanting everything to end versus like, let me change it for the new. And I think that's kind of the central theme to the 4th season too, is I mean, they weren't exactly, I don't know. They were pretty heavy-handed with with the thing because like Lenore and Hector have like a very literal talk about like the difference between strength and power and how like ambition works, and
which was great,
using Camilla.
By the way.
Yeah, it was a little heavy-handed in my opinion.
Of course.
I was like,
but I thought it was great. I don't know. I mean, I like their interaction probably because I'm still so. I love Hector and Lenore. They're dynamic, and it's like this weird where it's like this dance of. You kind of tricked me and you enslaved me, but also like it feels like there's this like tension, this sexual tension between them, right? Like they're super into each other, but also not into each other at the same time.
Yeah. So when they first started talking, I was like, oh, here we go. Ooh, vampire lady and dude, and they're gonna like hook up or whatever. And then they kind of threw you for a loop because then Hector was like kind of going along with it, and then he tries to kill Lenore, and then Lenore's like, step back, bitch. And like, and they had that moment, and I was like, okay, they kind of saved it. But then they kind of, I don't know. They for me, I didn't love their two characters a little bit, just because like. Hector, I felt like he never really got to where he really wanted to be. Like they kept making this big deal about how he like wanted to be a pet. He wanted everything to be his pet, or like and then he wanted to be Lenore's pet or whatever. And like they kind of like danced around this topic of what Hector wants. And in the end, he just is like, I just want to be alone.
Well, because you gotta think about it, because like Hector's arc, right? The whole thing about Hector's arc is that he's always been this pet, this tool. He's never been free to just live, do whatever the hell he wants, right? And so at the end of this, like the final season, what we assume to be the final season, he is free. Because before, like,
I guess that's fair, yeah.
Because you remember, this whole time up until this season, his goal was, all right, even part of the season actually, I got to get Dracula back. I got to bring my master back, right? But that's great. Yeah. But like much like how, and the biggest development we had mentioned was Isaac. Isaac points out to him, and they kind of mention it too with like the vampires, like, oh, cute, the humans are sticking together now. And it's like, yo, what if you just lived for yourself? Like Isaac and Isaac and Hector have always been under Dracula's command, right? And like, hey, do this for me. But what about doing stuff for yourself? And I think at the end, that's where you see Hector. He's like, I just want to be alone. I just want to be alone. I just want to write a book. I don't know. It doesn't matter because I'm now Hector.
Actually, on second thought, I think I appreciate a little more, and especially the final interaction between Hector and Lenore too, when Lenore's kind of like, I'm just going to head out. And Hector's like, I thought it was interesting because like I fully expected Hector to be like, no, don't do, you know, like we can work this out. But the thing is that in theme of like being your own person, Hector also recognizes that Lenore is also free to do what she wishes.
Right.
And if suicide is the thing that she wants, then like she is totally allowed. She is her own person and she should be allowed to do her own thing. And I think on second thought, it does make a lot more sense.
I mean, like suicide, I don't know. I mean, like it's technically like more of like, I guess in a way it technically is, but the way I look at Lenore's thing is more like she realized she's a dated like mentality. Like she doesn't want to be a part of this world. She's been alive for too long, you know? And she realized this, and that's why like Hector didn't want to stop her, right? Like Hector's like, hey, you know what you want best. And you know, Lenore's been through so much. She gives you the backstory. She was born into like, you know, war pretty much, right? And all she's ever known is this war, and she just wants to be at peace. And I thought her exiting scene was beautiful. And when she turns around and looks to Hector and is like, oh, is this all that this is? That everyone's been crying about? And just beautifully disintegrates. And it's just like her scarf is the only thing that's left. And I thought that was a beautiful scene for Lenore. And I thought it was so powerful to just have Hector there. You know, like you could tell Hector's like, just like, get it, you know, like what you want to do. If that's what you want to do, I'm here for it. And like you just saw those two characters kind of just become their own people and finally are free from the chains that held them back. So that's how I looked at that end for them. And so their stories got a resolution. I did not expect Lenore. I thought like Lenore would just die or something like that, right? Like, but like, you know, like it's, you betrayed Camilla and she kills you, right? And that would have been kind of whack, but I'm really happy that they gave her a beautiful send off. And they gave like the Hector and Isaac interaction was so perfect because they came from the same place. And I think that's why I'm here for that. And watching Hector just become his own person was the best. And that's why I think like their arc comes to a close. I couldn't have asked for a better close for them. Then the arc that was the best from season 4 was Isaac's. Right, like, because we have to, because as Josh had mentioned, he was creepy. He was a revenge story. He lived for revenge. He lived like it was like his hatred powered him and gave him a reason to live. But he realized, as Josh had mentioned, he is so much more than that. He has power, right? He has power, not strength. He has power, and I think that is why he realized with that power. He's, you know, I'm going to better. I want to see the better like in the world. So I'm going to be the change, right? I'm not going to kill. Yeah. I'm not going to do all these things. I'm just going to work and just to make the world a better place. I'm going to spare you. I don't feel like I need to kill you anymore. I don't think I need to do all these things. And I think the best scene this whole season that meant so much to me watching it was when was when Isaac sat down and talked with that night creature. With just having berries, just feeding him berries. And it's just like when you're like the night creatures, you know, the spawns of hell, you know, they have souls of, you know, wicked people from before in their past lives. Right. And their purpose is to, by now, if you've watched the first 3 seasons, is to destroy, to, you know, like do all these things and just burn, destroy, you know, mess the world up. But Isaac saw a different use for them. He's like, but what if you could also rebuild? Like you can destroy with the hammer or you can build with the hammer, right? And he
By the way, I was just going to mention, like, is everybody in hell in this story like necessarily evil? Because the way the demon that could talked about his past life made him pretty like comparable to Socrates, where he was like, because he was a philosopher, and it's like, It just made me think, like, I guess the way I took that scene was that, like, not everybody from hell is that, and hell is just, like, a function of, like, whatever. They're just sent there for whatever arbitrary reason because God doesn't like them. Right. And then they're brought back to destroy things. And so so the way I took that scene is, like, slightly different, where I was like, he was like, oh, this is my nature. And then, you know, what Isaac said there with the berry was, like, maybe that isn't your nature, you know? And so that's what kind of got to me, was that, like, you know, these people who are like respawn from hell and they become like the weapons for these Forge Masters. That's just because that's how Forge Masters use them,
right?
Not necessarily because that's only what they are,
right?
So that's how I took it slightly differently, I guess.
I think that is exactly a very good point, right? Not every person that is in hell is bad, and you could see that within Dracula himself, right? Like Dracula was conflicted, yes, but at the same time he wasn't just thoroughly evil, right? I don't think he was. I didn't see him as a bad guy. I mean, yeah. So I know as I say that there's like a wave of dead bodies, but like that's a whole nother thing. But yeah, like that scene with the berries was beautiful because of that, right? Like you could choose to interpret that in however many ways you want, but like that scene, the reason why the berries come into play here is because Isaac offers the demon a berry, and the demon's like, I don't want to eat that. I want to eat flesh, drink blood, all that. And Isaac's like, I don't think a berry's gonna kill you. Why don't you try it? And so the demon tries it, and then he's like, it tastes like memories from a previous life. You know what I mean? So it shows that scene was powerful to me because that was an integral part of showing you that Isaac is growing. Isaac did not need to kill. And I think that was the biggest thing, because he talks, kind of like it is a point that's been brought up numerous times. It's not the first time you're going to see you can build with the hammer or destroy with the hammer. But it was cool to see Isaac talk about it, right? And to see Isaac come to terms with that and watch Isaac grow. And that is why that scene was so big for me. And watching him feed the berry to like the demon spawn, and that I think was the true turning point, at least for who Isaac was as a character to me.
Yeah, I mean, thinking about it now a little bit too is just I feel like another sub-theme of the show is the importance of companionship. When I think about like Dracula in his misery, he just kind of pushed everyone away. He was just like, leave me alone. I just want to be miserable. Get out of here.
Same with Alucard.
Like, same with Alucard. But he finally meets friends, and you get like some of those scenes with Alucard being sad in his castle, talking to the dolls, you know, like, but the importance of that companionship was clear within him. And then for Belmont, like Trevor, like he turns for the better with the companionship of Sypha. And Isaac is better as he talks to other people, and Hector is better having talked to Lenore, and Lenore to Hector. And actually, like Camilla is the one who kind of pushed everyone, because they always said, Camilla's by herself again. Here she goes. She's going freaking crazy because that's what she does when she's alone. And so it was kind of interesting now that I think about it, how much like getting other people's perspectives is so important to like the well-being of a person just in general. And I thought it's like the show has infinite examples
as people, right? Like, and it's not just amongst like humans, it's amongst anything. And I think you saw that, like example, like you had mentioned the couple, the vampire couple, the one with the badass like war leader vampire.
Oh my
lady.
gosh, she was so cool.
And the badass
she was so
armor,
cool,
right? Like, oh my, like let's not even go over the action scenes. Actually, we can talk about that a little. The action scenes are so good in this show, and season four has even sweeter action scenes. Like, oh my god, that was badass when she fought all those people. Even they found like companionship in love, right, for each other, and that allowed them to grow and look at the bigger picture, right? And Camilla didn't have a bigger picture. Her bigger picture was that it was kind of the cliche, I want to rule the world because I was miserable, so I'm going to make everyone else suffer, right? Like, so I felt bad for Camilla, and it's very much so intentional, right? And that's why she never grew, right, as a character or as a person. And
yeah, she just got wrapped up in her own kind of like delusional ambitions, and it controlled her, and she had no stopgap for it.
And that's why Isaac grew, because he saw that, right? You saw, like, when you think about it, I line those two stories up in my mind. You look at Camilla and you look at Isaac, right? They're both in power, right? They have power and strength, and how they go about it. You kind of just see the two parallels. You see Camilla just continue to go down the path that she's gone on, and then you see Isaac take a turn for the better.
Yeah, I mean, I really felt for Isaac, because I think at my core, I'm a doomer. I see the worst in society, and it distresses me. Right. And so it was kind of it was just funny to see him go into these situations where like people just didn't want to be tolerant of him and whatever. And even though he gave the option of just like, dude, let me just pass. I'm not gonna cause you trouble. Just let me pass.
Yeah.
And he has that quote where he's just like, why do I do this over and over again? Isn't like doing the same thing, expecting a different result, the definition of insanity, right? Like,
right.
I felt him.
That
I was like, man,
such a
like
good, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so like I felt for Isaac because I constantly feel that way too, where you know you look at the news and you're just like, oh god, why do people suck so bad? And but like he was given the opportunity to change, and he has the strength and power to actually move the needle in the world. And I think that's what really sets Castlevania, I think, apart from just a good watch in general, is that you can have kind of philosophical talks about the show because. There was like a cinema class I took, and they were talking about how like good shows have like good shows and good plots have like a beginning, middle, end, and everything is wrapped up. A great plot has something that has to do with like the human condition, and I felt like, you know, some of the stuff that we've already been talking about just aligns with that perfectly, right? Like, and so yeah, I don't know. The show really, I think, has a lot of stuff to like think about and talk through.
I couldn't believe that, and I think that's why the show is so powerful, and it's just because you can have self-reflective journeys as you're watching this, and you know, and you see the characters go on these journeys, and it's wild because it's more than just blood, guts, and gore, but it has that, right? It has that, so it just has something for everybody. And I think that's why this show is brilliant. It's consistent for me. I think from seasons 1 through 4, it's consistently good to me. There's obviously some parts that drag, you know, but like whatever, right? At the end, to see it all come together now, I love it. And like we had mentioned, there's another character, because it seems like the writers knew that Sypha and Trevor are as far as they can go, right? Then you see the characters, like you see Alucard, who now is understanding true companionship because he's alone in his castle. And by now he meets new companions, and he's now like potentially, he's like inviting, like, you know, letting the children of the village, he's housing a whole village, right? Yeah. And he's always been alone, and he's used to being alone. But then, like Josh had mentioned, he finds companionship.
He even gets betrayed.
Yeah. So this is big, and I think to watch it, all these stories and everything build up, and then you finally get to the fight, right? The final fight of death itself. That was
the death fight was the most. Wait, you finish your thought. Sorry.
I thought this fight was badass in like visuals, right? Like it looked so cool. Like you got it felt like this, a little bit like a 2D platformer vibe at some points, because they had these angles where it felt like a nod to anyone that played the older games, because it had the 2D platformer vibe where you're kind of like jumping, and then the boss is just like here, and he just does like this one swinging motion that you have to kind of dodge, which Trevor, it had like that little video gamey moment that I felt, right? But then on top of that, the fight itself, like you get to see Trevor's, you know, goodbye, essentially. To like everyone, like, you know, hey Sypha, that scene, Trevor is a terrible name to name. And I'm just like, oh, she's pregnant? And then on top of that, I'm like, that's cute. And it's the Han Solo, I love you, I know. That, like, they had that. They definitely made sure you had the Han Solo moment. So it had its cheesy action one-liners that you kind of want from an action series, but then it had its cool video game moment. And I really liked seeing death and like seeing Trevor fight death. Because it felt like you had been waiting and seeing what Trevor was saving up all these items for throughout all of 4th season. Because he'd been picking up like little jewels and like gems and stuff like that, and like these random weapons. And then finally it comes together in this final fight to figure out why he's been doing that. Because it shows you how smart he is too. Because, you know, he did grow up as a Belmont.
I have a little bit of a different perspective. I actually thought the death fight, while visually really, really awesome, and I enjoyed like the sci-fi moments and stuff, I thought Death was such an asshole. He just kind of shows up out of nowhere. He's just like, oh, this the random vampire guy that you didn't really know what to think about him. He's actually Death, and then you find out, well, it's not actually Death itself. He's just like an ancient elemental who like feeds off of Death, but he's here anyways, and he's just trying to like revive Dracula for his own. He for me, it felt like the typical anime moment where you have to bring in some sort of like ancient being to like finally fight against, and you have to fight for like, I don't know, the chalice or something. So
there's gotta be one of those. I don't know.
But visually it was awesome. Like the Reaper looking menacing as hell. Like I thought all that was really cool, but I did think that I was watching it and I was like, oh, this is really cool. And then I like turned my brain on for a second. I was like, why? And then I was like, okay, no. Stop thinking about it. Just enjoy the moment. I did. But
it makes sense. Why, right? They've been messing with the corridors, right? And they're messing with like opening portals, places here, like, dimensions here and there, going to hell and back, stuff like that. So it's only natural that when you start messing with stuff like that, there's gonna be an ancient evil that they're gonna have to fight. Like I guess it was already kind of foretold that something like that would happen, right?
I guess they needed some big bad guy to fight at the end.
Yeah, they need a punching bag.
I guess.
So they got one, right? And the whole point of the season, by the way, is that everyone you're finding out, like, Sypha and like, the Belmont, Trevor, they realize, hey, for the rest of our lives, we're gonna have to stop people we're gonna have to try to stop people from summoning Dracula and doing dumb stuff. So we got to be there, right, to like stop that. and so of course, eventually they then there's Saint Germain's, right, and who's voiced by Bill Nye, and I love that. Not the
Bill Nye?
Not the science guy.
Oh.
Not the science guy.
Got me really excited.
Actor Bill Nye. And he's in Underworld too. So like stuff like that.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, his voice is perfect for Saint Germain, and he is an alchemist, so he naturally, his reasoning for doing all this is a little bit of love and a little bit because of the mad scientist vibe. Like, I must know more, so I'm gonna open the gates to hell essentially and ruin everything. And so he, Saint Germain's like is putting Dracula and Alucard's mother, Dracula's wife, into the same body, because they need essentially what is a dummy body that is both man and woman, that is, a
Regis.
Yeah.
The Rebus.
That way they can maneuver, control the corridors and how it works. So all of this eventually goes awry, and that summons death, essentially. And that is how that gets there. And I think this whole season, it was cool. It was cool because it ends right where it started, because they go right back to the very beginning city that you see in episode 1. And you see how everybody's fared since then. You've seen how the royal family has fallen. You meet some characters that may have gone mad. But at the same time, like, you just see the repercussions of everything and like where the city is. Cause they always just, like in most shows, they just leave the city and that's it. You never hear anything about it again. So it's nice to see them come back to where it all started and see how everything's been, how the people are holding up.
Oh my God, dude. The royal family arc there where Sypha and Trevor are talking to that one lady about the dead royalty. I was mauling. I was like, she's so dumb. I can't, obviously she's gone insane, but like, it was also really poetic, I felt like, in like current times where just like, rich people just have all this money and then you have people up who are just like suffering and like can't get anything done. And like, I don't know. It was funny to see how like society, when it's like too bottom and too top heavy and like there's no connection, that like they both suffer.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. That's exactly it, right? You watch both sides suffer. And you also saw that money isn't everything at the end. Right, like they're literally sitting on riches, and it does nothing because they're in the same boat as the people above. They're still starving. So it was cool. It was cool watching all of this, and then finally, now this is the big spoiler. Like at the end of the death fight, Trevor doesn't make it, so we assume. And then eventually, you know, after that, you get to see Sypha, like, oh man, they tug at your heartstrings on this.
Yeah, I was like, oh, I feel so bad for Sypha. Like, good for Alucard, he gets a new start and all this stuff, and I was happy for him. And
I can't tell if he's in love with the new girl from the other town. You know, the one that she fights alongside him.
Yeah, the town leader.
Yeah.
I forgot her name. I think they were pretty heavy-handed there too. I think there's definitely something going on there. Yeah.
Okay.
So the thing here is that I have some complaints about just general ending stuff, but I think it's kind of unavoidable, and I'm not even saying it as like a real complaint, because I think the way Castlevania ended felt pretty good to me. Like I had it felt like a full arc, and it ended, and it had an ending, and it felt fine. But you know, like I think every big fantasy story like this always has a problem sometimes of tying everything at the end. You know, like Game of Thrones is a very famous example. Like,
oh yeah,
it's easy to write characters out. So like every fantasy story starts with like an origin point, and then the characters will spread out and start discovering the world, right? And they all like, and the congealing point is the end, right? Where they all come back together, and that's like where things kind of end up being predictable or being weird. But you know, like despite like Castlevania having some of that like predictableness in the ending, like we talked about this with all the other characters like Lenore and whatever, is that like I still just enjoyed how it ended for most of the characters, right? Like I just like enjoyed that Alucard gets his ending and his kind of redemption. We get Isaac's redemption, we get Hector's redemption, we get even Trevor and Sypha, you know, they get a happy ending too.
Everybody gets a happy ending, even some that pop up that you're like, how did they get there?
Yeah, I was big question mark. You know, the funny thing about this entire story is all Dracula wants to do is be dead in hell with his wife, and everybody's just trying to bring him back.
Yeah, he's like, yo, leave me dead, please.
I'm putting this alarm on sleep mode. Don't res me, ever.
Dracula has denied your res.
Like, press no.
So like to kind of like close up on the show, I think this show was very good, and in that it gave resolutions to characters that I don't think I would expect to see out of the normal show, right? Like you don't see a lot of that. Like they aren't willing to do the things that that like Castlevania did for these characters. Some of it predictable, but then the ones that weren't, right? Like and even the predictable ones were enjoyable, right? But even the ones that weren't predictable, that's the one where it really shines for me, because I could not believe the resolution some of these characters gave you. Now, I'm not trying to spoil everything for you, but at the same time, you know how this ends for like a good amount of characters, and some of them are just absolutely just stellar endings. Like as we had mentioned, Lenore and Hector. I did not see the ending for Lenore to go that way. I did not, you know what I mean? I did not expect to see that. I did not expect to see Isaac's ending the way it did. I mean, you saw it slowly kind of happen, but you know, like even then, right? Like I just did not expect that, and I thought it was great. And I think this is the perfect point to really talk about just Western anime too. Like as we kind of like segue into that soon. So.
Let's just give our ending thoughts, I think, on Castlevania. Yeah. Here, this is now, we're past the spoiler part. Now we'll talk about it generally. I really enjoyed Castlevania. It was, in terms of like an animated thing, it's kind of on the shorter end in some ways, like 34 episodes is not a long time, but I think Castlevania actually benefited a ton from having a shorter, tighter written plot line and story. And I thought it set out to have like a very direct goal, and they got there. It's beautifully animated. I love the animation a lot. Aesthetically, just like the gore, action, all that stuff was just beautiful and fun. The story is great, like I said. And so honestly, at the end of it all, I really enjoyed this anime, and animation. I don't know.
And we'll get into that. So.
Piece of media, animated media. And I highly recommend it. This one probably lands for for me like a 9.5 out of 10. Like this
How about
is like
out of Niisan's though, out of 5?
Out of Niisan's, like 4.5 out of 5, I think is fair.
I would say for me on this, it hits the check boxes for like everything for me. And so I'm giving this a solid 5. I'm giving this a solid 5 Niisans because this caters to my favorite type of aesthetic, right? Horror-esque, that kind of stuff. Has great characters, has like just the interactions they have are charming. You love every character. And on top of that, yeah, as Xell had mentioned, the animation's gorgeous. And most importantly, it sticks the ending, which is so rare. So when you see that, you're like, I'm throwing petals and roses at my screen. I'm like, yo, this is what I need right here. Like, because it's so rare. You get an ending that's good, right? It's usually like, oh man, like I'm grading it on a curve because it's always so bad. But this is good, like genuinely just good, a good ending. And so this kind of like leads to, as you could see, where our next topic lies. And it's that Western anime, right? Like is it anime? Like that was that's another thing we want to talk about because Castlevania, is that an anime? And by all like means of like the term animation, yeah, okay. Yeah, sure. But you know what we mean when we say anime, right? So like what makes it an anime?
Yeah, I mean, this question was so much easier, I think, like 20 years ago when it was so clearly like Western animation was like CG based or looked like Pixar and like that's what we imagined as like cartoons and animation. And then anime was like, like Astro Boy and anything that's from specifically Japan. Nowadays, personally speaking, if I was to kind of say like what is anime now for me are just it's like a collection of motif and culture that is in the style of that. It's an animation of that style, right? So like, in my opinion, looking at Castlevania, it is so clear to me that they heavily took inspiration from anime. Is it actually like an anime? Like, I would say it's close enough that I feel pretty okay with it. It's like, have you ever seen those like D&D charts where they're like how strict your definition is for things? I don't know if you've seen those charts, but like I think generally speaking, I have pretty loose definitions. Like I tend to be on the chaotic side of like how I define things. As Crim knows, like I call like Tokyo Ghoul a vampire story and stuff. So, which it absolutely is. But anyways, and so like,
okay,
Space Jam is an isekai, right?
Yeah,
like,
okay, yeah. You're right. Okay, yeah,
it's technically correct. And so like for me, like while it's not specifically Japanese, I think it is so indicative of that style that like I'm pretty comfortable with calling it like anime. I don't know. It's just a Western anime in my mind.
Right. Like so would you say like Avatar: The Last Airbender, like a Western anime? And
yeah, I think
it's still an anime.
Is what?
Is it still an anime to you, Avatar?
Yeah, I mean, Avatar also feels... So it's funny because, like, Avatar in some ways feels like it... I don't know why. Actually, now that I'm thinking about it, I'm not really sure why, but it's for some reason in my brain, it feels like less specific. I don't know why this is, but it feels like less anime-y than Castlevania for some reason in my brain. I don't know why that I feel that way. But, like, I think, like, it's very clear that it takes also inspiration from anime as well. And so, like, I would be pretty comfortable with calling it like a Western anime, even though it's not even like technically Western because like a Korean studio animated it. So now
there's tons of Korean studios, like because like God of High School, right? Like you got to like think about that. There's also lots of anime that's stemming from Korea now, right? Like.
I think God of High School was animated by MAPPA, but directed by a Korean guy.
Was it? Okay. But the thing is, it kind of comes from, like, it seems like it draws a lot of inspiration, at least, like, especially names and all of that, too. It comes from Korean background, right, and stuff like that too.
Oh yeah, the source
Right?
material is for
Right?
sure Korean.
So,
yeah.
So the thing here, and the reason why I bring that up is because I used to look at anime, or how my criteria for what's considered an anime is that I usually draw it as something coming from like Japanese background, you know, like, and like bringing a lot of Japanese like ideals, cultures, stuff like that, and then like as you had mentioned, then animating it, right? And then of course there's also art style. Like you see the style. And you just kind of know the bigger eyes, the way it's drawn, the lines, everything. That's how I always viewed it through like the actual art itself. Is that closer to anime? And then whereas there's like, you know, like cartoons or something. Like if I showed you Wolverine and the X-Men, I'm not going to say that's anime. But then if I showed you like, you know, I would say like just that, you know, like any anime that you can name, Dragonball, whatever, that's anime because you can just tell by the art style. Now, as we move farther away from that, and as you know, Xell had mentioned, the lines get a little more blurred, right? Castlevania has some serious like Sypha's eyes and whatnot. Like the art style gets closer to anime, and it almost feels like it blends, you know, like the classic American cartoon and whatnot, and you know, like Western art style, and then combines it with anime. And so I struggle to also figure this out myself. Like, is this an anime or is this not an anime? And oh
my god, new game show idea. Is this anime? And I'm gonna show you like stills from animated shows.
The issue is, it feels like I don't know if there's a right answer when you go on that show, right? Because like yeah, like so I look at Castlevania, and I guess if I go by my original criteria, it's not full on anime, right? But it kind of is. And because this is the issue, right? Like, so like you also look into it, like also what studio made it, right? That usually would help. Like Studio A1, okay, cool. That's an anime. But then if you show me like, and then what is it? What is the name of Castlevania's studio again? Like Powerhouse?
Powerhouse,
right?
yeah.
Yeah, Powerhouse. That's not an anime studio. They're in Texas, right? So for me, a lot of it came from the studio, but even that world of anime is starting to blend, right? You now have tons and tons of things from all sorts of media, as Xell strategically planted before. I'm gonna just bring up a few right here. Okay, so for those that remember Doomfist from Overwatch, there was a movie short for him. And it was done by Wolf Smoke Studios. Then we have, Xell had mentioned Sun Creature Studios, which had done Travel Oregon, the Double Lift League of Legends animated stuff. And then, of course, there's Studio Purri, which did Epic 7. And then, of course, there is the big one, D'Art Stagio Studio, which is actually the first Black-owned, like, you know, non-Japanese owned animation studio. And they're in Japan. Right? And they've worked on things like One Piece, Attack on Titan, you know, stuff like that. And then, of course, there's, you know, Powerhouse did other things too, by the way, like Clerks. And then Studio Mirror is probably the biggest one that perfectly walks that line for me when I think of, God, is this an anime or is this a cartoon? And they've done tons of those because they've done Last Airbender. They've done Legend of Korra. They did a season of Boondocks. They did MK Legend of Mortal Kombat, Legend of Scorpion. So these are all studios that are now starting to just blend together the styles of anime and just cartoons.
Yeah.
So, like,
I gotta like ask some animators about like, is it like the process maybe that's like the defining, you know, because like I think about, okay, so we take a Western owned thing like Powerhouse, and you look at Castlevania and like it feels kind of anime, right? Western anime. Okay, how about Japanese? So, well, Japanese make Japanese anime. Okay, like of course it's anime, but how about like Japanese animation studios that like doesn't look like traditional anime? You know, I think of like Masaki Yuasa's like Devilman Crybaby, right? Is that anime, right?
That doesn't look anime to me.
But it's a Japanese studio,
right?
And who's and a guy who's well known in the anime world, right?
Yeah.
So like, it's confusing. I don't really know, and so it's hard to know now what like anime really is anymore. Except that, like for me, I can only say it's just indicative of a style and culture, and that is what makes anime. Because like I don't know. I guess you could be as literal as just only Japanese studios can be anime, but it feels like a disservice to say that when like there are other studios that are doing things so adjacent to it. Like I see some of these Chinese studios, like, you know, you had mentioned Wolf Smoke, and I've seen some of like the Korean stuff, and like if you were to do an eye test with somebody and you were to say, look at Studio Pore stuff and now look at like a traditional Japanese anime studio, you would never be able to guess like which was the Japanese studio or not. Like right. You really could not be able to unless you recognized it. And so I don't know. I don't know what to say.
Like this is the cool thing though. Like, so like we often get asked, and you know, I joke all the time, like SpongeBob's my favorite anime and like Cory in the House, you know, we all know those jokes, right? So the thing here is, I think this is actually really good for the world of anime. And so that we're even having this discussion, because when you think about it before, it used to be like how I had mentioned, it would drew a lot of inspiration from Japanese culture and all this stuff when it came to animation, all of that, right? But so now you can get that like Japanese like style when it comes to animation and whatnot, and then you put it in like somewhere like British anime. You know what I mean? Like it's so yeah. I think stuff like that is really good for the world of anime, because then it opens the world of anime up to more like way different stories too. And at the same time, like that's just badass, right? I think we're getting more and more of this like hybrid, and we like, because people would call Ruby anime.
Yeah.
Right? And,
even though it's fully Western, it's CG, but people call it anime.
And if you were to ask me that, I wouldn't call that anime, because that doesn't look like anime to me.
Is X-Arm an anime?
X-Arm is not a show that exists to me. So it is nothing. I don't know what you're talking about. Are you being weird again?
In some ways, you know, I wonder how much, kind of going back to my topic of like, maybe it's about the processes and stuff. Because I think before the age of the internet, animation techniques and styles were probably much more siloed, you know, in the world, right? Like Disney had their way of doing things. Japan had their way of doing things. France had their way of doing things. And I think probably now in the internet age, where things are easily, you know, data and methodologies are easily disseminated across the world, you know, I wonder if like the reason why it's harder and harder to know what's anime is because all these techniques and all these things are just now spread. Because if you look at the credits list to like any anime, you're going to see there's tons and tons of outsourcing to either Korean studios, Vietnamese studios, Chinese studios, French studios, you know, you name it. And through that, they probably pick up on stuff from the Japanese animation directors, and then they use it to work on their own stuff. And like, I know, for example, because like I worked with Sun Creature on the stuff at Riot, and like I know for a fact that they employed the background artists that worked on like Miyazaki films, right? And so it's like, well, that guy literally worked on Miyazaki films, and you would think like, well, Studio Ghibli has to be anime, so like, is Sun Creature anime in just its backgrounds now? And like, it's I don't know. I think it's just kind of cool to see how widespread and stuff, and like how these things are being absorbed by different cultures, and like anime itself is, I think, evolving in such a rapid way. And I think what's even cooler, I think, in the future is how they're going to continue to iterate and to push the envelope of what is possible in animation. And like, to me, I think like seeing Demon Slayer and like these anime that are real studios that are really good at incorporating like CG environments and doing like crazy camera work within animations. Like, it's cool to see that kind of innovation for what they do, because I don't know. It's kind of like, where does anime even go from here now that like everybody knows what everybody else is up to and how it works and how, you know. So I don't know. It's really cool to see.
Yeah, like, and I mean, you're gonna start, like, you also see it just in anime now, where they're also blending in other styles. Like, let's just go with Megalobox season 2, right? They are pulling from other cultures now, right? And like, so that, I think that's really cool. and seeing that stuff like that is badass. So, I mean, you've seen it before in like Samurai Champloo. It's not like Megalobox is the first time person to do it, but like they are pulling from other cultures. And so you're kind of seeing how people and studios and stories are trying to change up the game of anime. And I think this is great. I think it's a mixture of cultures now. And so I guess with all of this information, right? Like all of this, and for the listeners at home, because we haven't answered the question yet. Is Castlevania an anime? I mean, you said yes, but like even with all that in mind,
I say yes.
Why does it feel like we're still hesitant to say yes, right? Because like I say yes with a dragging E, like somewhere in there.
Question mark.
Yeah, probably, right? Like, if we're gonna say yes to Castlevania, then we're also gonna say yes to Avatar: The Last Airbender. We're going to say yes to Korra. You know, we say yes to all of that. So can you comfortably, because to answer this, my answer, I'm going to say my final verdict is Castlevania is an anime. It's done a good enough blend of, Japanese inspiration when it comes to art style, all this stuff. And I think I'm slowly beginning to move away from it just has to be done by Japanese studios. As long as it takes the inspiration from the art styles of Japanese culture, art, and all of that, I will say yes. And it's visible. So like that for me at least is my criteria now. The old criteria that I had that it had to be like A1 or a Japanese studio, that's going away because we have so many good studios out there now that are like pretty much adjacent to what Xell has said here, right? Like they're pretty much doing what anime's doing. So I'm just going to go with now because I don't want to discredit that. And like, there's just so much good stuff out there too, right? Like the anime season just gets longer and longer now. There's just even more content to watch. And I'm happy for that. I'm happy.
I 100%. I still want to make this game show. Like, is this
an anime?
Will it anime? Will it anime? And like pull up like skills for like, is Teen Titans an anime? Probably not. Legend of Korra, I guess. Castlevania, yes. And, like you just keep flipping through these things of like, is this anime?
It's got to be a
anime?
speed
like,
round. It's got to be a speed round too. It's got 20
you have
seconds.
like 5 seconds max.
Like 5 seconds. Is this anime? Yeah. Okay. No. Yeah. No. Yeah. No. That's what. You know what? We'll bring on guests, and we'll probably we'll work our way towards that. And I think that's one of the things we'll do with them. That game show is going to probably happen here. So
heck yeah.
So yeah, like closing thoughts as we get to the end of the episode. So I gave mine, but what about you? So like you have said yes to Castlevania. And like, so do you feel like when you went into this, the criteria that you had, is it different now? Is it different after we talked about it?
I guess like, is it an anime is less of a strict definition for me now. And it's really like a spectrum, right? And if it feels like it's mostly derived from like an anime thing, then I can hesitantly call it like an anime. Like that's how I feel about Castlevania. It's the way I feel about, Avatar: The Last Airbender. It's like, it's on the spectrum. Is it anime-y, And it's like, yes. And then like, but if you had a gun to my head and you asked me like, is it an anime? I would just say like, probably yes for Castlevania. And that it takes enough inspiration, I think, from the way it's animated, from the way anime shows are, like it feels okay to call it that. Like, yeah, I don't know. I've some of these frames I see in Castlevania, when Sypha's doing her fire attacks and like something blows up, like, and they have like there's like a specific shape where it's like a 4-sided star like this.
Yeah.
And
that's
like,
so animated.
You see that all the time in anime. And so like, I saw that and I was like, oh, that's so anime of them to do it that way. So yeah.
Right.
That was a long answer, but yes.
See, like
that's how hard it is.
Yeah, because nowadays when you watch these shows, you think that to yourself too. I know that for a fact. Everyone listening at home, you watch it and you're probably thinking, your brain's like, that's such an anime thing to do. That's because it is an anime, right? Like I think the more of those that's so anime moments, it just, at what point is it just actually an anime, right? Like,
yeah.
And so I think Castlevania has enough of that's such an anime thing to do moments that it's just, yeah, it's an anime. And the more, like, you know, as we talk about it through this episode now, the less reluctant I am to say yes to it. Just because it starts to click, right? Like, it makes a lot more sense that, yeah, it's an anime.
Yeah, there you have it. Like, I'm kind of curious to see, like, for people who are listening or watching or whatever, like, what do you guys think about like our conclusion here? Because I'm so curious because this has been kind of it's like a philosophical question,
right? And we're not
anime,
the final we're not the final word on this, right? It's not like well, Crim and Xell, you know, they said it.
Like I would love to see other people's perspectives, because
like this is a topic that is pretty gray, right? Like it's pretty open-ended too, I think. And it's kind of tough to just come up with a definitive answer to it. But just like we just wanted to give you kind of an insight to how we look at it and like how we process these things and if we think it's an anime or not. We're not guaranteed to be right. We're not 100% wrong, I don't think either. So, you know, like let us know in the comments. Let us know in our subreddit, reddit.com/
/r/Niisan podcast.
There it is. I was definitely not looking at Xell to give me a hint. So yeah, hit us up with all of that there. And, you know, just if there's other examples, by the way, of wonderful shows that push is this an anime envelope, please recommend it to us because I want to watch more of those. You know, I want to see like the things that I might have overlooked. And, you know, I'm pretty excited.
Maybe we'll feature it on a game show.
Yeah. Then we'll add it to the game show. So yeah, like I guess other than that though, I mean, because now we're pushing in at about an hour and a half. Let's go ahead and just say thank you to like once again, all of you have stayed through this. Sorry about the minor spoilers, but I still recommend if you haven't seen Castlevania to please watch it. And
it's so worth it.
I cannot recommend it anymore. And then on top of that, you know, like we'll be coming back to the more, I guess, traditional sense of anime with the next episode. So be sure to tune in for that. And thank you for listening. Thank you for subscribing. However you're choosing to enjoy this podcast, thank you for doing it. Thank you for sharing amongst your friends, your grandma, your dog, whatever. Like whoever you're sharing it with, thank you for doing it. And other than that, Xell, why don't you send us home?
Thank you guys so much for watching and, do all the thingies, like, comment, subscribe, ring the bell, ring the doorbell, ring everything, and we'll see you guys next time. All right. Thank you guys so much for watching
Peace.
and listening.